So what do you think? The people say that they have to impeach him now. They're too far into the process. There's no way to stop it at this point.
Well, the only thing they're far into is their hysteria. I mean, the Ukraine business is even sillier than the Russia collusion claim, but they want to impeach him. They hate him. They find him icky. I think it's really boring, and most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, are not paying attention and don't care, and nor should they care. Every time President Trump exercises the office of the presidency, they go crazy. And you can always, I mean, as some of this is the comparisons are gone through in resistance is futile. But just a quick example, that hysteria over Trump firing Comey, because the Russia story was nonsense. Of course the president has the authority to fire people who work for him and, in fact, to direct investigations. You can go through Nexus and find headline after headline of Obama and Clinton and Bush ordering investigations, ordering his Department of Justice and FBI to do this investigation, that investigation. In the Clinton years, as Osama bin Laden was carefully plotting the 9/11 attack, Clinton ordered his FBI to direct its focus to abortion clinic protesters. So that was the big. FBI agents kept contacting me. I was just starting to be a journalist, and independently, different FBI agents kept demanding that we meet. So I could write about this. I didn't write about it at the time, because I should have. But they said all of our resources are being devoted to chasing ghosts. there are a few wackos. I mean, I think in since Roe v. Wade, and it actually the shootings and the violence didn't start until Roe v. Wade was upheld in the Casey decision. But I think that like 7 abortion doctors had been shot. I'm not approving that, but that isn't 9/11.
Yeah. So.
And yeah, of course presidents do this, but if Trump does it for obvious reasons, and we now know it was an obvious and true reason, there was no Russian collusion. That they treat that an impeachable crime, and in the case of Ukraine, it's even stranger because the thing Trump wanted investigated was a far more egregious, among other things, a far more egregious example of what he's doing, alleged to have done, specifically Biden holding up $1 billion in aid to protect his son, not to protect America's trying to keep countries on the straight and narrow and cleaning out corruption, and also to get to the bottom of where the Russian collusion story started, as I described when this story first broke. It was CrowdStrike, a Ukrainian-funded cybersecurity firm that is the sole source of the claim that it was Russia that hacked the DNC, and CrowdSource happens to have been funded and founded by anti-Russian oligarchs. So, yeah, I think a lot of us would like to know how this Russia hysteria started.
Yeah. So, hey, this is interesting. This is just developing. They're going to have this conference in Saudi Arabia. They're calling it Davos of Saudi Arabia. Now, you remember all the swamp people yelling about Jamal Khashoggi, we must boycott Saudi Arabia, we must stand up to them. Well, it turns out they're all going to this conference. Every hedge fund guy, every billionaire, every Bloomberg is sending it down. The Washington Post are all going. So, you can't trust anybody in that swamp, can you?
No, you cannot. You cannot. That is something we are getting out of Trump. He is exposing the double dealing and corruption. It really is. It's a lot. There's an excellent article for any of you who have time to read it in the Claremont Review. About Brexit and why Brexit hasn't gone through, because I have to say I don't really pay attention to other countries. I care more about my country. But it is kind of weird. It's been, 3 years now since the British people voted in an election that got more votes than any other election in Britain's history. No other election has come within 3 million votes of it. Voted very clearly to leave the EU, and it still hasn't happened. And Christopher Caldwell, who wrote the article, he doesn't make this exact comparison, but it is an exact comparison to what is happening to Trump. It's the swamp of these international globalist bureaucrats. They are just indignant over the British people, who are just, they're like MAGA supporters. They're normal people. They vote for this, and then it can't happen. And you have the bureaucrats with all their little tricks and their slick language coming up with excuses. And no, the British only voted for permission to leave the EU, but we have to decide that. No, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. Just leave. And it's the same thing with Trump. We voted for Trump, but we have lots of tricks. We have lots of ways. We're going to bog him down with this stupid investigation. We're going to stage impeachment. We're going to be hysterical about every little thing he does. Trump should just mostly ignore it and, as I believe I may have mentioned before, keep his promises to the voters. That's what matters most of all.
Yeah, now, the idea of Brexit, the British voters voted that we'd like to control our own country. We don't like having two bureaucrats in Brussels decide what we're allowed to do, control our borders for us. That's why they want out. They want to leave the EU, Brexit. But you're right, these Soros-funded swamp globalists are everywhere. Even over there, they're here.
Yes. And it's really stunning. I mean, most probably your listeners are like me and don't really care that much, but I do think it's sort of a precursor example of what may be happening to us. It's really stunning how much. I wish there were more articles written on this. How much the EU was bossing England around, because it wasn't just on immigration, which was obviously the biggest issue. Yes, you have to open your borders to all of these
refugees.
Well, yeah, third world Muslims, and we see how well that's gone if you follow the news. But also just like directing how many fish they were allowed to fish. They imposed anti-bullying regulations in Spain. It's crazy, and gay marriage. It's like our Supreme Court. The EU is like our Supreme Court in the Warren Court era.
Yeah. So, but somebody said they spent 50 years building this swamp. You're not going to tear it apart in 2 years. It could take 50 years to dismantle it, if ever. I think the president has to realize that.
Well, I must say, I think he's doing a pretty good job, and he's opening people's eyes.
Yeah.
I think the question is, will Republicans see that this is what the people want? Is the same thing I've said over and over again on immigration. Trump, if nothing else, should have been a little how-to manual for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
These are the popular things to do. Do this.
Well, yeah, but in their defense, they all got their relatives on payrolls of companies and corporations. They don't need this being looked at. Right.
That's true.
Well,
that's true.
Everybody get Ann Coulter's book. If you haven't read it yet, it's the book on all of this. And even if you're a Democrat, you could learn a lot from this book. It's called Resistance is Futile. It's a big bestseller. If you haven't read it, read it. And the new column comes out tonight.
Yes, it does. It's boffo.
And you should go to AnnCoulter.com and make sure you follow Ann Coulter on Twitter. Excellent tweets all day long. Ann Coulter on Twitter. Ann Coulter, thanks for being with us.
Good to talk to you, Mark Simone. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Oh, and check out the webpage. A lot of good stuff up there. Now, every